how did I cope? I grieved. I allowed myself to be broken. It was a reminder of what I lost.
Yes.
And I had to feel that. And I think that that's part of coping. Coping is allowing yourself to honor what you lost, because it's saying that was valuable, that was precious to me.
No matter what kind or type of mom you are, isa lang ang hangad nating lahat. To be the best mom for our kids. Because in this journey we call parenting, hindi tayo nag-iisa.
Tara, usap tayo. Hi, I'm Mommy Julie and welcome to another episode of Usapang Nanay. In this episode, we will be talking about a serious topic. We will be talking about coping with the loss of the child and the option of adoption. Today, we are joined by an adoption advocate and managing director of Rohei Foundation. Walang iba kundi si Miss Cuna-Henson.
Hi, Mommy Julie.
Ma'am
Thank you so
Chrina.
much for having me.
Yes, it's our pleasure po.
I'm so
And
excited to be here.
we are very excited to hear your story, so let's go. Miss Chrina, kanina kasi, guys, nandoon kami sa behind the scene. Now, we were already talking about na meron na siyang 3 kids. So,
Yes.
Mami Chrina, we really love to hear about it. So, paano nag-start yung motherhood journey mo? And, of course, we are gonna tell you guys na Mami Chrina lost her first baby. So, we want to know more about it, Mami Chrina, if it's okay.
Yeah, of course. I think I always say that my journey into motherhood was a little unconventional. It wasn't that straightforward. It wasn't a straight path. When I first found out I was pregnant, I had probably been, my husband John and I had been married maybe about a year, just over a year at that time. And we were so excited to be expecting a child. I remember, you know how the first time you discover that you're pregnant, it's like everything changes. I remember that day after discovering I was pregnant, everything changes. The way I was living in Singapore at that time, and so I remember getting on the MRT and thinking, okay, like, wag ako magpabangga. Kasi parang from that moment that you see 2 lines on a pregnancy test, and your mind shifts, who you are changes, and you become a mom. That was the start of my motherhood journey. Unfortunately, 5 months into that pregnancy with my first child, I discovered that one day I was supposed to just be resting at home. How come I'm not feeling her move so much? And at 5 to 6 months, medyo malikot na, di ba? Parang at that point in time, there's a lot of movement, they're kicking a lot, babies are usually kicking a lot. And I just said, there's something wrong. So I remember telling my mom, parang she's not moving so much today. So I was trying to really listen to my body. I was trying to really see, what can I do to make her kick or make her move. I was drinking sugary drinks, anything to see what I could do to make her move. And that night, I ended up, going to the emergency room, going to the delivery room, to really check, because after a day of no movement, I really knew there was something wrong. There was something in my heart that just knew there was something wrong. I was in denial. I didn't want to get checked, but decided that night I was gonna go. And that night I discovered in the delivery room, what they do kasi is they check with a Doppler machine, right? To check the heartbeat of your baby. You know the sound of a heartbeat, right? If you're 5 months pregnant, you already know what it sounds like. And so, parang wala. In my mind, I was going, I can't hear the heartbeat. So I asked the doctor, I said, bakit parang walang heartbeat? And then she goes, ma'am, kuha na lang ako ibang Doppler machine. Check ko, try natin sa iba. So she came back, and 3 Doppler machines later, I looked at her and I said, Miss, call my doctor kasi wala akong naririnig na heartbeat. And I think at that time, kasi the residents aren't allowed to give you any information or to make a call or make any assumptions about what happened, and they really need to be sure, so they really need your doctor to come. I said, call my doctor now. We had to have the ultrasound department at the hospital powered up. It was the middle of the night. My OB comes rushing in to do an ultrasound, and we confirmed it. Kasi when I looked at that ultrasound monitor, I said, there's no flutter. When they say there's a flutter, any mom who's going through these checkups knows you're looking for the sound, and you're looking for that flutter, that pulsating thing on the screen that tells you that's your baby's heartbeat. And so I looked at my doctor, who's also my tita. I said, Tita, flutter, there's no, I don't see the heartbeat. And that night, we realized that we had lost her. We had lost my daughter. I was rushed into emergency care and had to be admitted into the hospital. And 2 days later, I delivered my stillborn daughter at 27 weeks old. I held her in my arms for a very brief moment. And then I had to say goodbye, and my arms were empty again. And even though I felt like a mom on the inside, I was always wondering, why are my arms so empty? My arms feel empty. I feel like I'm a mom, but I'm not because I have nothing to show for it. This is probably the darkest time in our lives as a couple. My husband and I, we really had to face that grief, that loss. It's just a really, really hard time. Parang nothing prepares you for that day. Diba? Parang hindi siya masyadong pinag-uusapan yung happens
totoo.
when you lose
Sorry,
a child.
medyo naiyak ka kasi I cannot really imagine yung loss of a child kasi alam mo yung feeling na you're preparing for it. You're very excited. The first day you knew that you're pregnant, diba? So, medyo hindi okay na kaya talaga. Actually, nung sinabi nila sa akin that we are going to interview Miss Chrina about the loss of a child. So, medyo sabi ko, kakayarin ko ba? But, Miss Chrina, you're very strong. And we would also love to know, the first time na nalaman mo yung tungkol dito, sino yung mga tao lang na sinabihan mo? Kasi it's so hard diba? It's so hard.
Well, I was very public about celebrating my pregnancy. It was my first, which we do now, diba? Parang when you find out you're pregnant, it's like, you tell all your friends, you post it on Instagram, you post it on Facebook. And I mean, social media to me is really my way of staying connected with people. And so it was pretty public. And so I remember when I discovered that I had lost my daughter, Celine, I thought to myself, I don't want to have to explain this to everyone because everywhere I go, they're gonna ask me, "Mommy, where's your baby?" Right?
Yes.
And did you give birth? Where is she? Where's the baby? And I didn't know if I would have the strength to explain that to everyone every time I see them. And I also knew that it's something that people don't really know how to talk about. So I'm awkward then for other people to have to tiptoe around the conversation. I mean, my friends knew, my family knew almost immediately while everything was happening, especially my friends from church. Everybody was really praying for us. And so a lot of people knew right away. But within the week, we posted it on social media as well because I really felt like, one, I didn't want to have to explain to everyone. I think that was probably at the root of it. But also, I really wanted to honor the life of my daughter.
Yeah.
That even if it was brief, she was my daughter and I carried her for 6 months. And even if it was brief, I knew that she made me a mother. Something inside of me was different. I didn't want to hide the fact that I was grieving the loss of my child because she was precious to me.
Totoo.
Sobrang valuable niya sa akin. So I wanted to make sure that that was honored also. And I'm really glad I did that. I'm not saying I was so public about the grief, but actually that step of not hiding it and not being so afraid to enter into that season of grief, I think really helped me, and it helped me get to know a lot of people, and it connected me to parang this underground community of moms who had lost children, didn't realize how common it was to miscarry, to have stillbirths. I was able to draw a lot of strength from sharing my story and from hearing the experiences of other moms also.
Yes. Ang hirap mawalan ng taong minamahal natin, diba? Pero it's also very hard for us na mawalan, lalo na ng anak natin. Usually kasi nasabi nila, ay mag-anak ka na lang ulit. Kasi diba? May mga ganyan nagsasabi. But it's not so easy kasi pag nalaman mo nga na buntis ka, you already feel it right? So, papaano ba, Mami Chrina? Papaano ka nakapag-cope sa ganitong senaryo? Kasi yun yung parang medyo mahirap. I remember na dinugo pa nga ako nung mga first trimester ko and sobrang natatakot ako. So, papaano ba mag-cope pag ganito na yung nangyari?
Well, you know what? Actually, before I answer your question about how did I cope with that time, I want to comment on what you said about that's so commonly spoken by people who are trying to comfort somebody who's lost a child, either through stillbirth or miscarriage. Okay lang yan, you'll have more kids. But honestly, that's probably one of the most painful things you can tell someone who has lost a child, because you don't just replace one child with another child. And unfortunately, people think that because you didn't get to hold that child in your arms, and you didn't get to raise that child, that you probably don't know. But as a mom who was pregnant, you know there's a very strong bond that you have with your baby, even in the womb. And you love your child. And there are even times where you get hints of your child's personality, diba? Parang medyo alam mo yung personality ng baby, you know, what they're like. And so to say that is an extremely painful thing, because you just don't replace one child with another.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of well-meaning friends and family members, but I think that if you want to say something that's helpful, let the mom feel the grief, the loss. It's not something that you just want to brush aside. And I think that's part of the coping. You know, I think, how did I cope? I grieved. I allowed myself to be broken. I allowed myself to cry in the mall. I remember I would sometimes go into the mall and then I would see a crib sa SM or somewhere, sa department store, and I would sob in the mall by myself, like a crazy person. I would just have to come home and tell my husband, you know, I broke down in the mall again. I was just supposed to do errands, and that was just the reality of my life at that season.
Yes.
I would go to church, and then sometimes I would see a mom with a stroller, and I would cry and cry and cry in my seat, because it was a reminder of what I lost.
Yes.
You know? And I had to feel that. And I think that that's part of coping. Coping is allowing yourself to honor, one, what you lost, because it's saying, that was valuable, that was precious to me. Kaya ako siya iniiyakan, kaya ang sakit-sakit. Because my child was so precious to me. And so, I'm so grateful. My husband and I were so deliberate. We kind of knew already. We said, let's not shove this under the rug. Let's not just try to escape the grief, you know, distract ourselves with life. In fact, we slowed down. We took a break from work. Whereas my tendency actually would be maging super busy, diba? Parang the easier way, I think, would have been to busy myself with work, to do a lot of things, try to get back on my feet, forget it ever happened. But I think because of that, that's where our journey into adoption happened. That's where really healing was able to take place, and it was really able to become a place of hope for me again, because we were deliberate about that grieving process.
You face the reality, parang ganon talaga.
Yeah.
Pero Miss Chrina, gaano katagal yung coping process?
I think it's different for everyone. So, you know, I can really only speak for myself.
Yes.
I'm still grieving. You know, I think there are still times that I'm grieving. It's been 6 years. And I have a friend who was pregnant at the same time as me. I was pregnant with Celine. She was pregnant with her child at the same time. And every time I see her son, she would have been that age. And there's still grief. And I don't think that grief will ever leave me. Is it overwhelming? Not anymore. My kids are now very overwhelming and make my life very, very exciting. But the grief is still there. And I think I'll carry that my whole life.
Yes.
I don't think I'll ever be able to get away from it.
Sabi nga nila, pag nawalan tayo ng mahal sa buhay, hindi talaga tayo makakalimot. Masasanay na lang tayo na wala na sila.
Yeah.
Pero yung memories nila, it's still here.
Right.
Diba? Marang yun na lang, mabubuhay na lang tayo ng ganon.
Yeah. In fact, I talk to my kids about Celine, about the daughter that I lost. So sometimes they'll ask about her, because I have a photo carrying her for the 2 hours I got to hold her. I have a photo holding her in my arms, and so that's framed in our house. And so my kids see it, and they go, oh, that's ate. I'll meet her in heaven one day. And
Talagang hindi siya nakalimutan and all, talagang inaccept. So that's the part of coping process, talagang accepted yung nangyari.
I think you have to. And I mean, I think it was a lot of my faith carrying me through that hard time, to know that God doesn't allow bad things to happen, and He doesn't just leave us in our broken state. And you know, they always say, you know, things happen for a purpose. And for me, I really do now see the purpose of that pain. If I did not lose my daughter, I would not have adopted. I would not have been able to do the work that I do today. That would never have been birthed in my life. I know that. I have to face the reality that I would not have been able to accomplish what I'm doing today if I didn't lose my daughter. And so as painful as that is, and as much as I wish that didn't have to happen, it's part of my story now.
Yes. Miss Chrina, we would like to also know, no, nung mga panahon na to, Bukod sa husband mo, of course, sino pa yung mga tao na talagang nakatulong? Or is there anything that really helped you na makapag-cope during this time?
Yeah, a lot. I had a lot of really close friends that even though I wasn't, parang ayaw mo naman lumabas masyado in times like that. But I would have friends who would say, I know it's a hard day. I'm coming over. It's okay if you don't, it's okay if you don't open the door.
Yes.
Or it's okay if you don't want to talk to me for so long. I'll just sit in your house.
Yeah.
It really meant so much because when they were there, they were ready to listen. They were ready to talk about it if I wanted to talk about it and not to talk about it if I didn't feel like talking about it. So may mga friends na ganon, you need that.
Yes.
And I think there were a lot of people I didn't realize because when we posted it nga on social media that I had lost my daughter, so many people, strangers, started messaging me because I was so deliberate about posting online. Actually, what was really helpful was, one, I was blogging, I was writing, so that was helping me process also what was happening. And then, may mga nag-reach out, some people that I didn't know, sometimes friends of friends, that would say, I also lost a child, how are you doing? Or it would be sometimes be the other way, oh, thank you for sharing your story, it's brought me so much strength and comfort. And I realized that the journey for a mom who has lost a child is so unique. I mean, as nice as it is to have friends around you, sometimes only a mom who has lost can truly understand that kind of pain. I think not to be afraid to reach out, just an encouragement for the moms who are listening, who maybe are still in that place of grieving, that actually moms who have also lost are more than happy to actually talk and to be there for one another.
Yeah.
And so that's really helpful, I think, in terms of coping with the loss.
At saka ang ganda nung sinabi ni Miss Chrina na meron ka mga friends that they won't really foresee you to speak about it, pero parang gusto lang nila na to be just around you. Parang ganun lang na magkakwento lang ako, makinig ka lang dyan. Parang ganun lang to lighten up the mood, pero not really to parang force you to talk about it, let's talk about it and all.
But actually, the truth is, at least for me, I really wanted to talk about it. So when people would come over or my friends would check on me, ang hirap nung, when you lose a child, that's all you're thinking about. And so when you ask me about anong gusto kong kainin, anong pinapanood kong K-drama, wala. I'm not thinking about that. I'm not thinking about anything else. The only thing on my mind, only thing in my heart, it's overwhelming. Diba? Yun lang yung iniisip ko eh. So sometimes when you talk, it's hard to talk about other things. So it's nice to have friends who will say, how are you today? What were you feeling today? Are you doing okay? What were you thinking about?
Checking up on you.
Parang checking up on you, but letting you talk about it if you want to, and if you don't, it's okay.
But not really force you.
But not really force you to just be there, diba? And also yung hindi sila takot to ask, are you okay to talk about it? I think a lot of people would appreciate
So,
that.
malaking bagay pala yun. Kasi actually, I have a friend, no, nagpagdaanan niya din yung ganitong scenario. And ako, as a friend, I was really scared to talk about it. Kasi bilang nanay, painful siya for me kung sa akin siya mangyayari. Pero hindi ko alam kung paano ko siya i-address or paano ko siya ito-talk. So, malaking bagay pala to really check up on your, parang
friend,
how are you? Okay, parang ganon.
Yeah, because I think it's a friend's way of saying, parang when you do that, you're communicating to your friend. I recognize you lost something precious to you. And you might want to talk about it. So if you do, I'm here. I'm ready. Right?
Oh.
Parang it's confirming to them
Yes.
that they lost something valuable. Kasi the hardest part that I hear from other moms, and I've gotten to talk to so many other moms about, losing a child, is at some point, the world moves on.
Yes.
I'll never move on, diba? Parang that was my child. I don't think I'll ever, like I said, diba? You'll never leave that grief behind. But everybody else, life goes back to normal for them. But for the mom who's lost, they're always carrying that. Deep inside their hearts, they're always thinking about the child. Not a day goes by that I don't think about the child that I lost.
So, Miss Chrina, if ever, syempre, like, may mga friends dyan na meron din silang friend na napagdaanan yung ganito. Aside from dun sa tatanungin ka or whatnot, na medyo polite, of course.
Yeah.
Ano po yung mga pwede nilang sabihin doon sa friend nila to really comfort that friend na napagdaanan yung ganitong sitwasyon?
I think you're right? Just being sensitive, when you ask. And actually, there's really nothing you need to say. I think presence is so much. And just the encouragement that God can heal your heart from the loss, the encouragement that really, my friends couldn't tell me anything that would comfort me other than to lead me back to God. Kasi sobrang laki nung grief mo eh.
Yes.
Only God could comfort me. Sometimes offering advice and things like that, it's not really necessary. It feels necessary, di ba? Parang gusto mong makasabi ng something encouraging.
Yes.
Or gusto mong makasabi ng something na makakatulong. But the truth is, there's really nothing that a friend can tell you to make that pain any less, to make that pain go away. Maybe just to remind you that it wasn't your fault. That when loss happens, to just be careful not to blame yourself. Kasi diba, sometimes that's what happens when a mom has lost a child. It's like, the truth is, the child died in your body. Diba? And for a woman, it's hard to process that. Loss happened inside of me, under my care, under my watch. I was supposed to keep this child alive. I was supposed to bring this child into this world, and this child was lost in my body. And so sometimes there's this false sense of responsibility. For me, there were no red flags that this was gonna happen. Actually, my pregnancy was going pretty smooth. But still, the thought of that having happened inside of me was like, what did I do wrong? It's like you replay everything that happened. Did I run so fast that, did I shake the baby? Did I, did something happen? Should I not have exercised? Should I have gone, should I just have stayed in bed and rested some more? There's so many what ifs. Things that you play back wondering if you could have done things better. Should I have taken more vitamins? For me, it was an umbilical cord accident. So there was nothing we could have done to prevent it. It was literally, my daughter was born with a coiled up umbilical cord, meaning because of her movement, sobrang na-twist lang. Naipit yung cord until it cut off the circulation and the connection between us. Even though it was an accident, there's still that tendency to wonder if you could have done something differently. I think just affirming your friends that it's not your fault and helping them, just giving them the space to talk and process and helping them heal.
Yes, meron din kasi mga negative comments kapag ganito na parang, alam mo yun, pag nawala na nga ng minamahal yung isang nanay, tapos sasabihin pa na, trabaho ka kasi ng trabaho. Naku, ganito ka kasi ng ganito. Ganito. Remember yung kay Alex Gonzaga. Tapos ang daming negative comments na na-receive niya na parang hindi na siya talaga nakakatulong. Some other people, they are just gonna comment about it. Pure yung intention. Pero yung mga ganitong comments, like, yung may part na nga ng ganun yung magulang, na parang,
yes, they're already doing that, diba?
Yes, somehow they are blaming themselves. Pero pag ginaganon mo pa sa kanya na parang trabaho ka kasi ng trabaho, ganito ka kasi ng ganito, blah, 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 blah. It's not really helpful.
Right.
So just be there for the friend na affirming them nga that it's not your fault.
Yeah.
So, Miss Chrina, babalik ulit ako dun sa experience mo. So, nung nag-start ka, kasi 6 months mo pa siya nalaman, right? Yung first trimester and all, meron na bang parang red flags or may sinabi na ba sa'yo yung doctor na maaaring ganito yung mangyari and all?
Not at all. So it was generally a healthy pregnancy. There were a couple of times where my amniotic fluid was a bit low. I had to come home. I was on bed rest for several weeks. The cause of death was an accident. So no red flags that could have warned me that, cord coil. I mean, not a cord coil around the neck, but the way that that typically happens. But literally, na-coil yung cord, the umbilical cord. And so it was shocking. In fact, it's so vivid in my mind because it was a Monday. I saw my OB. I did an ultrasound. She said, I was healthy. I didn't need to be on bed rest. Everything was good. It was Thursday that the baby wasn't moving. So that Thursday that Celine wasn't moving, I was thinking to myself, I'm sure it's fine. I just saw my OB 3 days ago. I kept kind of trying to debate with myself. I'm sure it's okay because I just saw her a few days ago. So it was so unexpected for me. I mean, nothing can really prepare you for news like that. I mean, I think even for moms who have red flags along the way or who have high-risk pregnancies, the loss is still overwhelming regardless of whether may red flags or wala.
So talagang aksidente siyang nangyari.
Yeah, for me, it was that way.
Miss Chrina, of course, maraming manonood sa atin na they are also experiencing the same thing. So, what can you say about the moms who lost their child? Ano yung mga pwede mong sabihin sa kanila? How will they cope about it? Although na-share mo naman na yung coping mo, pero what can you share for them na paano sila makakapag-cope about it?
For the moms who have, I guess, recently lost or maybe the loss is still feeling very fresh it doesn't mean that just because it happened a long time ago, it doesn't feel fresh. For some, it happened a long time ago, it still feels fresh. But I think that to give yourself the time and the space to heal, to reach out, and really find your strength in God, find your strength in your marriage, and be very open with your husband, your partner about what it is that you're going through. Because you have to go through it as partners, you have to go through it together.
Yes.
And you grieve together. For me, it was, even though the loss happened in my body, my husband was also grieving. And we needed to go through that. And because of that, we became all the more close because we went through that grief together. And so I think that's something that you can really share with your husband. You don't need to walk through it alone. You can encourage your husband to just share also his own grief with you.
So, Miss Chrina, paano naman dun sa mga husband na yung wife nila, of course, naka-experience ng ganito, ano yung mga pwede nilang gawin that will really comfort the wife? Of course, it's parehas naman silang, of course, na wala ng anak. Pero somehow, mabigat kasi tayo yung nagdala. So, ano yung support na pwede nilang ibigay for their wife?
I think for me, it was helpful to know because the husband and the wife, the mother and the father, grieve very differently.
Yes.
One mom can grieve differently from another mom, and one dad can grieve differently. I mean, everybody grieves differently. I think to just be together in the grief. Meaning, I think for moms, it's helpful to know that my husband's also grieving with me. Because you can feel so alone, feeling like nobody else, right? This is only your child, you and your husband. So it's your shared grief. Only you are this connected to your child. And so I think to walk through it together and just be together in that time. It was helpful. My husband and I would sometimes go to Tagaytay for the weekend, just to really slow down. And iyak lang kami ng iyak, diba? Parang just to allow ourselves to process the grief, to talk about what happened, and to figure out what our way forward was gonna be like. Okay, where do we go from here after all of this? Yeah.